So what's at stake are the lives of children. What's at stake are that children are going to die if we don't make changes.
Tonight, the Manitoba Child Advocate lays out how systems that were designed to help failed 15-year-old Tina Fontaine.
They threatened us, denigrated us, hurt us, and abused us.
They survived the racism, assaults, and genocidal practices common in Canadian history. Now just one more hurdle to a day school settlement.
When Europeans brought over wool, they made the sashes even more beautiful, and they took the First Nations patterns and wove these new colorful threads together.
And how one woman is weaving the art of the Red River Metis sash.
Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. It's been nearly 5 years since the body of Tina Fontaine was pulled from a Winnipeg river in August 2014, sparking national outrage and calls for a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It's been more than a year since a jury found Raymond Cormier not guilty in her death. No one else has been charged. But the trial chronicled troubling details of Fontaine's life leading up to her murder. Now a new report released by the Manitoba Children's Advocate is outlining the many agencies that failed the girl and what needs to be done to make sure it doesn't happen again. Brittany Hobson brings us this.
Friends, family, and the community of Saugeen First Nation gathered today to say one final goodbye to Tina Fontaine. The Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth released her much-awaited report on the death of Fontaine in 2014. The morning started with a drum song. Approximately 30 people filled this gymnasium to remember the 15-year-old. And here the report that detailed how so many systems failed the girl. It was a day that weighed heavy for many in the room.
We have to also acknowledge the many other hundreds of children and youth who are falling through the cracks of our society's safety net, just like Tina.
The 150-page report titled "A Place Where It Feels Like Home: The Story of Tina Fontaine" outlines the life and tragic death of the young girl. In August 2014, Fontaine's 72-pound body was pulled from Winnipeg's Red River, days after she was reported missing. The youth, who was originally from Saugeen First Nation, was in the city to spend time with her birth mother, when she quickly became a victim of exploitation.
People come to understand the indicators of exploitation, and that, sadly enough, for children when they are on the streets, nothing comes free.
Daphne Penrose, the Children's Advocate, made 5 recommendations in her report, including the need for better access to mental health and addiction services and a new protocol to address missing youth and sexually exploited youth. Fontaine was in the care of Child and Family Services, who consistently didn't know where she was or if she was in danger. 7 missing persons reports were filed with police in the 10 months prior to her death. Penrose says this is too common for kids in care.
And so we need to be able to pull that apart and understand when a child is missing with risk, those kids need responses. And that's why the recommendation is so important, so that work can be prioritized and joint child welfare and police systems can work together to find kids and bring them back to safety.
Lack of services was a major theme. Fontaine began to struggle after the death of her father in 2011. The report says support from victim services was not offered, nor was any counseling. She was being raised in what was, by all accounts, a loving home by her aunt and uncle who had no supports to help the girl. It was a common theme throughout her life, and eventually she became an exploited runaway bounced through the system. Penrose urged the government to immediately take action.
So what's at stake are the lives of children. What's at stake are that children are going to die if we don't make changes.
Saugeen Chief Derek Henderson calls the report a start.
Do what you have to do to protect those children, right? Do what you have to do. Jurisdiction should have no issue, right? It shouldn't be provincial, federal. We're talking about kids here. right? And that should have no bearing. If we can get to that where the communities are being listened to, I'm sure the numbers will go down.
Fontaine's death was a catalyst for change. It renewed calls for a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, saw the reemergence of the Bear Clan Patrol, and saw the formation of Drag the Red. Penrose says the province needs to act quickly, but it is also up to the rest of Canada to make sure this doesn't happen again.
It is not this report that changes it. It is what happens with everybody who is reading this report from this point forward. We all have the responsibilities.
Fontaine's great-aunt and primary caregiver, Thelma Favel, wasn't in attendance this morning. The family has asked for privacy at this time, but I did speak with Favel on Monday, and she said that she hopes Tina can finally rest and that this report will help with that. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Seguin First Nation.
So, hang on a second. No, that's not. We've got more on that. We'll come back. So, Carolyn Bennett, let's move to day school story. It's a big day for Indian day school survivors. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett announced a settlement in their class action suit. Unfortunately, one of the lead litigants had passed away just weeks ago. APTN's Amber Bernard reports on an emotional day from survivors.
How much I carried from the residential school days.
Margaret Swan couldn't hold back when talking about a system that shattered a people.
Our children still fill the child welfare system. Our people fill the jails. Our children are dying of suicide. They're struggling with addictions. And it all stems from residential schools and day schools.
Carolyn Bennett announced new settlement details for survivors. Each person is entitled to $10,000. For any survivor who suffered physical or sexual abuse, compensation will range between $50,000 and $200,000. But they won't have to provide verbal statements like residential school survivors did.
The survivors were clear they didn't want that again, and that they wanted to have a different process without that kind of re-traumatization or re-victimization. And so it will be a paper process. They will fill out a form.
Swan hopes the future is brighter because the struggle to get a settlement was difficult.
We need all the help we can get so we can be healthy individuals, healthy people, healthy communities. This is what my brother Gary and I always talked about. How are we going to get there? It's overwhelming.
Gary McLean was one of the chief litigants, but he passed away just a few weeks ago. Minister Bennett honored him by announcing a $200 million investment in the McLean Day School Settlement Corporation.
To support healing, wellness, education, language, culture, and commemoration for class members and their communities.
Nearly everyone who spoke talked about McLean and his ever-present smile.
Today, I say it's his day. It's Gary's day today, and we should all rejoice in that.
It was made very clear that he was someone filled with bravery and determination. He was a great teacher. He led by example, and he inspired us all.
Gary.
The proposed settlement still needs judicial approval. That is expected to happen sometime in May. Amber Bernard, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Sorry, so we'll go back to the Children's Advocate report that came out today. So the Children's Advocate met yesterday with Tina Fontaine's family, the Favel family, who had raised her to deliver the report to them privately before making it public. The report also noted colonization, residential schools, and the 60s scoop had devastating effects on Fontaine's entire family, spanning every generation since her grandparents. In response to the report, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is calling for an independent inquiry into Fontaine's death. It is time for us to take a quick break, but when we come back, a question around a BC serial killer being moved to a medium security prison to serve easier time. First, here's tomorrow's weather.
Starting off in the east, we've got 0 for Charlottetown, mix of sun and cloud, and we've got -2 and rain in St. John's, -11, mostly sunny in Kuujjuaq, -6 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Saguenay, snow and 2. Quebec City and Gaspé, 0 and sunny. 2 in Peterborough, 2 in North Bay, 5 in Sault Ste. Marie. 6 in sunshine in Sioux Lookout, 5s for Wawa and Timmins. 0 in Puckatawaga and 2 in Norway House and the Paw. 1s for Gimli, Winnipeg, Brandon with some cloud and possibly some precipitation. 0s for Saskatoon and Regina. 1s for Yorkton and Estevan. -5 in sunshine in Uranium City. 3 in L'Orange and sunny.
Welcome back. Canada's youngest serial killer has been moved from a maximum security facility in British Columbia to a medium security prison in Ontario, and that has upset many advocates in the province who are fighting for missing and murdered women. APTN's Tina House has this story.
Bernie Williams has spent 33 years fighting for justice for murdered and missing women and girls. She's just learned that Corrections Canada has moved convicted serial killer Cody Lejbokoff from maximum to medium security.
You know, the families, I can't imagine what they're going through. That is deplorable. That is disgusting.
Lejbokoff murdered 3 women from the Prince George area. His first victim was 35-year-old Jill Stachenko. She was last seen on October the 9th, 2009. 23-year-old Natasha Montgomery was last seen on September the 1st, 2010, and 35-year-old Cynthia Moss was last seen on September the 10th, 2010. Police believe his 4th victim, Lauren Leslie, was just 15 years old when she was murdered by Lejbokoff and left on a logging road near Vanderhoof, BC. Investigators believe they all met him with online dating sites and social media. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip is also outraged that only 2 families of the 4 victims were even notified of the transfer.
It's absolutely shocking that they would reduce his security measures to medium security. It certainly is a slap in the face to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls movement.
Corrections Services Canada issued this statement. All offenders are thoroughly evaluated and placed in facilities that can ensure their security and meet their program needs. Rehabilitative efforts leading to a gradual and controlled release have proven to be a better way of protecting the public.
They also moved Picton out of there too because he was being picked on. Well, boo-hoo, like, hello. You know, heck, you're a serial killer. This is who you are, and you deserve everything that you get.
He was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with no chances of parole for 25 years. Although Cody Lejbokoff was convicted in the first-degree murder of Natasha Montgomery, he has still not revealed where her remains are located. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
A trauma and addictions conference hosted by the Wikwemikong Health Centre is showing how the community is supporting members on their journey to recovery. Our colleagues at CTV have that story.
Tim Oninika is the director at the Northwood Recovery Treatment Centre in Wikwemikong. He says trauma and addictions are touchy subjects to talk about.
We all have to be open and acceptance and reduce the stigma that is attached to addictions. And that we all got to come together, and as we come together as a community, we will be able to focus more to address these challenges.
To help foster a better understanding of trauma and addiction, the Wikwemikong Health Centre and the Tribal Police Service signed a protocol. It focuses on ensuring culturally appropriate critical incident response is provided to all 7 First Nations on Manitoulin Island.
Every community has their own sense of culture, their own language, and here in our community we follow Anishinaabe-Mowin, and we want to make sure that when we're responding to any call for service, that we're doing so that's representative of our community.
When you're not taking care of one of the physical emotional, mental, spiritual aspects of yourself, then the others are not in balance. So we need to make sure that we're walking in balance every day and taking care of things and doing debriefings and talking to people when you need to talk to them.
The theme of the two-day conference is to follow the healing path to the good life. Alan Everson, CTV News, Wikwemikong.
While she is new to her Métis culture, a woman in Alberta has mastered the art of Métis finger weaving. She's now passing her knowledge down. Tamara Pimentel has this story.
There are multiple meanings behind the ceinture flèche.
The ceinture flèche started as a belt. When you're in the canoe, you could lean back into the sash and paddle your canoe. When Europeans brought over wool, they made the sashes even more beautiful, and they took the First Nations patterns and wove these new colorful threads together, and it became like a matter of pride to have a beautiful belt.
For Kaylin Kodiak, the Métis sash is also an entryway into her culture. 6 years ago, she took Métis finger weaving lessons for the first time. Now she creates her own patterns.
I literally thought it was a dead culture, and it was our culture, but it was, my family spoke of it as something from the past. It wasn't us anymore, and it wasn't until I stepped into my first weaving class that I realized there are people living and breathing their culture.
For 3 years, Kodiak has been running her own Métis finger weaving classes in Calgary. Students start off by weaving bracelets to learn the basic patterns found on the Red River sash, and they choose colors to represent their family background.
It just gives me a sense of place and purpose, because I feel like the culture I was raised in had a sort of an emptiness. It just didn't, we didn't really celebrate things with our whole heart. And then in Métis culture, I've found that there's a lot of people who celebrate their culture with their whole hearts.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
It's time for another break, but stick around. Here's the rest of tomorrow's weather. To northern Alberta, we've got -3 in Fort Chip, +3 in Fort McMurray, sunshine up in northern Alberta. 2 and sunny in Red Deer and Calgary, 4 and sunshine in Edmonton. 8 for Campbell River and Kamloops, sunshine. 9 for Vancouver and Penticton. Dease Lake is 2. Prince George is 4, so is Smithers, sunshine there. 2 in Dawson City, 2 in Whitehorse, 2 in Watson Lake, sunshine in the Yukon. -9 and snow in Norman Wells, -12 sunshine in Yellowknife. -21 for Paulatuck and Tuck, and snow there. -25 and snow in Cambridge Bay. -17 for Whale Cove. -21 and sunshine in Repulse Bay. Pangertung's in at -25 and clear skies in Glulek. Clear skies -24 and Welcome back. 2 brothers who are also top vocal coaches have been traveling to Indigenous communities for decades because they want to help children learn the joys of singing. APTN's Chris Stewart talked to the brothers in Whitefish Lake First Nation in northern Alberta.
Come on! What? Uh-oh!
Jan Cooper has worked with many of the industry's top producers and writers as a vocal coach. He and his brother Jack have been teaching singing lessons for about half a century, so they know talent. This week, the two are visiting a Tikameg school in northern Alberta. They want the kids to improve their skills by learning how to sing. The brothers say too many schools are removing music classes to the detriment of the kids.
Is they're taking music programs away from the children, and I think children should have music as a priority because it teaches social skills, language skills, you name it. It's a great way of bringing kids together instead of competition.
Right off the bat, we were doing Daddy Shark or Mama Shark or the Shark song, so the kids had actions. So we were having a great time. The kids were having a great time, and we were laughing a lot because they're fun, those young children. Just love them.
It's about 3 sharks that are hungry. 4 fish. I sing songs at home.
What kind of songs?
Like big cake songs.
So this is going to be easy for you.
I just make songs up too.
Children will be singing songs in Cree and making music videos over the 2 days, and they will give the teachers the tools to continue their work.
When we come into schools, we don't just come in and do something. I've developed booklets that I leave with the teachers. You don't have to be a music teacher. I try to get that across. There's enough programs out there, you just turn it on. Get the kids to sing once a week.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Whitefish Lake, First Nation.
It's the 80th anniversary of the Kabar and Agunja Walk in Victoria, Australia. Reporter Rachel Hookingway from the National Indigenous Television Network asked attendees their opinions on treaty.
As far as I know, Victoria is not in itself a sovereign nation. We're still part of the Commonwealth, and if we're going to treat with anyone, it has to be with Britain. That's where we're at. I think land rights is the focus that we need to have. I don't believe treaty will get us there, but I think what we can do is we can harness the energy, the positive energy around treaty, the desire to do something, the desire to make a difference, the desire to repair what damage was done at the beginning of our shared history. I think we can harness that energy and to turn it into something meaningful. But it won't be a state-by-state treaty, it can't be. They don't have the power to do that or the authority, as far as I know.
I am not inspired by it, but with the focus being led by Aboriginal people from this region and sovereignty being a key factor and a key part of that conversation, and also truth-telling, I would be in support of it, and I would be very inspired.
We're not part of the treaty process. The reason we're not part of it is if you've got a table there, what's on that table? You know, what are they going to give us? Then the sand. And you can't agree to treaty if you don't know what's on offer, what it is. You know, is it a bit of paper? There's some tea and sugar and a few blankets. Probably tea bags today. Okay, but we don't know what it is, and we're not going to be part of treaty until they, you know, and you know, our people talk about sovereignty. You know, we're talking about reparation, land.
A new development today in the wake of a plane crash in Ethiopia that killed 18 Canadians on Sunday. The European Aviation Safety Agency has suspended operations of the type of plane involved, the Boeing 737 MAX 8. The UK, Australia, France, Ireland, and Germany are just a few of the more than a dozen countries which have temporarily restricted flights involving that type of plane. The move is to ensure safety to passengers, they say. The Ethiopian Airlines crash claimed the lives of 157 people. The U.S. Federal Aviation Authority says Boeing will soon complete software upgrades to the MAX 8 anti-stall system. That system was a factor in a Lion Air crash of the same model of plane in Indonesia last year that killed 189 people. Canadian Airlines are not waiving change or cancellation fees for passengers who want to avoid flying on a Boeing 737 MAX 8. The announcement from Air Canada and WestJet comes amid a wave of requests from worried travelers. The two domestic airlines have 37 MAX 8s in their fleets collectively and haven't suspended the planes. That's your news for this Tuesday. Join me tomorrow on APTN in Focus at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central as we look at repatriation efforts to return Indigenous remains to communities. And I will see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.